The views expressed in this interview are those of the individuals and do not reflect the official policy or position of the U.S. government, the Department of Defense, the U.S. Navy, or the Naval Postgraduate School. Welcome to the Trident Room, brewer of stout conversation, unfiltered and on tap. On today's episode, the Trident Room co-host Nathanial Hancock sits down to get to know Trident Room host Luke Goorsky.
Thanks for having me on today. I guess I get to be on this side of the mic, or this side of the table, I suppose, for once, so it'll be a new experience for me.
I'd say I'm sure you've been doing a really good job so far. So
yeah, and I think that's really kind of our goal with this is just we all have kind of different unique experience that flavor the way that we do our own podcast episodes. So kind of giving the audience an understanding of where we're coming from, maybe we'll give them a better context when they listen to our discussions with the various folks we have on.
sweet. Well, where do you come from?
Yeah, so originally grew up right around Los Angeles, kind of north of Los Angeles. Lived there most of my life, and really enjoyed it there. Pretty standard Southern California kid. And
How did you end up deciding to go into the military then?
So military was not always my first thought. So kind of right at the time I was in high school, I decided I really wanted to go into the intelligence or law enforcement kind of career field. So originally that vision was FBI, I think, was probably maybe just the most popularized version of that at the time or whatever it was. But that's what kind of drew me to it. So went to school, or went to college down at UC San Diego, and got a history degree there. Finished up that and started just applying to the various federal agencies, three-letter agencies, whatever kind of law enforcement capability there was, and didn't really get a lot of traction in my job search. So started to look at ways to break into the field, and got some good mentorship from a family friend who is in one is in federal law enforcement, the other's in the intelligence community. And they both kind of recommended to me, hey, one good way if this is something you want to do, go into the military, get that military background, and on the intelligence side, get your clearances sorted. Just makes you a more valuable candidate as you're looking forward. And I went and looked at the various branches and ended up going Navy, and I actually really enjoyed it so far. So the Navy has converted me. I think I'm in here for the long run. And it's been a great ride so far, and hopefully it continues to be so.
That's awesome. So then did you do ROTC?
I commissioned through OCS, through Officer Candidate School. So for the Navy, that's up in Newport, Rhode Island.
Nice. So what was that like?
It was cold. So yeah, I think that's really my biggest memory from OCS was we have what's called Wake Up Wednesday, which is so when you show up to OCS the first couple days, you're kind of just going through admin, medical, things like that, and then Wednesday is the day that we get to meet our drill instructor. So the way that OCS works, you have a Marine Corps drill instructor and then a Navy chief, senior chief, RDC, and then a class officer. But really the person you get to know best is your Marine drill instructor. So Wake Up Wednesday is that day where you get meet your drill instructor. So
good morning.
Yeah, exactly. So you're woken up at some ungodly hour. We weren't even, we're not allowed to have watches at the time, so I don't even know what time it was that they woke us up.
Oh, wow.
And I guess I should have mentioned in the beginning. So this is mid-February in Newport, Rhode Island, and I'm coming from Southern California. So
a little different.
So wake up at this ungodly hour, get yelled at, run around, push-ups, all the normal stuff that you might see in the movies or things like that. And then finally, we all got our sea bags packed up and put on our backs, and we're going run out the door, run outside. And it was very cold. It was, I was like, what am I doing here? It was 70 degrees in California when I left. It's just, the wind was going everywhere. I mean, the wind was so much that some of the kids were getting knocked over by the wind.
Oh my goodness.
The wind gusts were just pushing people out. So, I do feel a little bit better because I actually went back after OCS or whenever we got internet access, and looked up the weather for that day. And it was, I think it was negative 12 degrees with the wind chill.
Oh
So
my
I didn't feel
goodness.
like, at first I thought it was like, oh, I'm just some wimpy Southern California kid. I don't know what cold is. But I was like, no, I think I can legitly call that cold. So
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
yeah, so but overall it was good. It's military indoctrination. So it's a 12-week program. You kind of broken up into 3 sections. You do first phase is indoctrination, which is get yelled at and learn how to get yelled at and do things in the right order in the right way.
Yep.
And then kind of a transition to a little bit more like leadership focus, how to lead people. And then the final 4 weeks is putting that into applying that. So you're kind of leading the newest class of officer candidates coming in. So that's the way Navy does. Did you commission through ROTC, OCS?
I'd say, yeah, I went through ROTC.
Okay.
And so, like, for us, it's just a lot of leadership training throughout your college career, and then we have about a 2-week block where we actually like go in and like we go down to Maxwell Air Force Base, Alabama, and like really go through like getting that intense high intensity training environment.
Right.
For that 2-week period, you get evaluated, and then that evaluation kind of sticks with you through job selection.
Yeah, no, I had one of my really good friends in college actually was Air Force ROTC as well. So I got to see him go through all of that, and I was very glad that I got to live a normal college life and only had to do 12 weeks of the craziness. But I mean, there's an advantage to ROTC too, because you get that job on the back end where I was kind of, waiting, and it was about a year between when I graduated and when I showed up to OCS. So job security is good, or having a job on the back end guaranteed is good.
So it's like through that, were you just like competing the entire time to just try and stay like above the cut line through OCS, or is that not like a thing with it?
Yeah, I would say there definitely is I don't know about a competitive environment. So for us and for the Navy, and I don't know how this works, if I remember correctly, and kind of what you said there, the ROTC is kind of how you perform, kind of gives you a spot to get your job. So like if you're the number one candidate, you get your number one choice. Is that kind of how that works for y'all? Sort of. And I think the Marines do that too, and I think the Army as well. But one of the reasons that I actually chose to go to the Navy was that they will, when you apply to OCS, you apply to your job. So,
oh wow, okay.
Like when I went to OCS, I knew I was going to be, if I completed OCS, I would be an intelligence officer. Whereas opposed to like the Army or the Marines, they, who knows what your job is going to be, right? And maybe you want to be an intel person, you're a top guy, but there's no intel spots. So,
you kind of already had that eye on the prize then.
Yeah, so I knew that I wanted to be an intel officer, and it was actually the Air Force too. For their OCS program, you also apply to the job and then know when you go in, at least when I was going through. So Air Force and Navy were the two that I focused my applications on, and Navy let me in first, and there we go.
As you were going through OCS, like, did you already have someone to write home to, or were you just like there as a stud just pushing through?
I mean, I had my family. I wasn't married or anything at that time. My family is a really, really great support system. Lots of letters back and forth from them.
That's awesome.
One of my other good friends from college was going through Marine OCS at the same time. So we got to kind of write back and forth a little bit about our different experiences. And Marine OCS does not seem like... I think choosing to go to Navy OCS is a lot better than going to the Marines OCS. It's a little bit of a different beast. Not to say that Navy OCS isn't challenging. It's just a different... I guess they're also just looking to create a different type of officer. They're looking for... Yeah, I think I'll leave it at that. They're looking to kind of create a different type of officer through their program.
You finish OCS, and then like, do you just go immediately into your job training to be an intel officer, or?
Yeah, pretty much. I think it was about a month back home. We're on OHARP. I don't remember what that stands for, but basically you go and help out at a recruiting office for a little bit while you're waiting for your job class to start. So back in LA for, I think it was about a month, if I remember correctly, and then down to, or I guess over to Virginia Beach, Virginia. That's where our Navy Intel School is in Dam Neck, so right near Oceana. And that was, I don't even remember how long that was. I think it was like a 3-month program, if I remember correctly. It was like 4th of July-ish to Thanksgiving-ish. So however many months that is. July, August, September, October, November. 5 months?
Ooh.
I don't know. I could be wrong. It wasn't that long ago, but it feels like it was that long ago. But yeah, Intel school was really good. I think that it, the intelligence community, or at least the way Navy does their intelligence, it's extremely broad. So we do lots of different jobs. Everything from your very traditional finding ships and all the way to supporting some special operations folks. Supporting an air wing or a squadron rather than supporting a ship. Doing like human intelligence stuff. So there's a pretty wide spectrum. So I think that at least my takeaway from what Navy, the Intel school kind of taught me was a little bit of everything, so that when you go to your first job, you at least can speak the language, I guess, and kind of know what's going on. But really, I think that what they say, like our core competency is op intel, so operations intelligence, which is that ability to basically, use multiple forms of intelligence to come in, bring it together, and create a coherent picture to brief to whatever operator you're briefing, whether that be a pilot, a ship's captain, or a SEAL or an EOD guy. Being able to figure out what they want, how to get the information they want, and then present it to them in a coherent way. So I guess that was another big piece, is learning how to present information. And we make jokes that we're just slide monkeys and just making PowerPoints all day, PowerPoint Rangers, 10,000 PowerPoint hours, all that good stuff. But as much as I think PowerPoint is the bane of some people's existence, really the end goal is to just be able to communicate what you know effectively to the operators.
I'd say, and communication is so key. I mean, like, you can look across the wide spectrum of military engagements, and like anytime that there's a huge success or a huge failure, it comes down to like how good was the communication between the commander, between the people who are on the ground, between all the middle people that were inside of there.
Mm-hmm. Oh no, 100%. And I think that was a good thing to learn at an early age, and I think that those people that are, and again, like you said, not just successful intelligence officers, but successful officers or enlisted folks, is their ability to communicate. Yeah.
So like with that, so when you went to tech school, you had like a broad kind of stroke over like the overall intel community. You guys didn't specialize in anything?
Yeah, no. The Navy intelligence community, at least on the officer side, doesn't really do any specialization. Okay. There are a few very specific programs that will get specialized, but those are few and far between. So we're kind of expected to be able to go and plug and play anywhere, and just kind of have a general idea of how to do the general job, and then you kind of learn as you go, which I think is kind of a lot of the military, different branches, different jobs all kind of have this similar thing, I think, at least from what I've learned.
So that's pretty cool. So then what was your first assignment like then?
So my first assignment was at the Fleet Intelligence Detachment, which is at the Office of Naval Intelligence in Suitland, Maryland. So I got to go up to the D.C. area for my first tour. And basically what they do there is we provide the intelligence support, or some of the intelligence support, to the carrier strike groups when they deploy. So it was actually a really cool tour. I think it was an awesome. I always tell people if to new ensigns or people thinking about coming to the Navy intelligence community, is I think that Fleet Intelligence Detachment, I think that is the best job a new ensign can go into. You get a real sense of what Navy intelligence is like at its baseline.
Did you have any time on boats then as the intelligence, or did you spend a majority of your time on shore?
No, yeah, it's sea duty. So I was on a boat, a ship, I guess. The sub-officers will be mad if I say a boat. Yeah, so like I said, what we do is we support carrier strike groups when they deploy. So for me, I deployed along with Carrier Strike Group 8 on board the USS Harry S. Truman, CVN 75, during their 2015-2016 deployment. So that was, I think we ended up doing almost 9 months out to sea. But I think one of my learning experiences from that in terms of naval operations, or at least the Navy training cycle, was I did not realize how much ships go underway before they actually go on deployment. So I was looking back at my schedule at the time, and in the 2 years that my assignment was there, and I'm sure this is true for a lot of Navy officers, but maybe some of the other branches don't know, but I spent I think it was 7 months actually at my apartment. So
wow.
Yeah. So it was gone a lot, but it was good. I mean, I was, single at the time, young ensign, happy, ready to go. Let's go do this stuff. So you go through the various training cycles, workups, things like that. Learned a ton. Learned a lot about leadership. Learned a lot about intelligence, managing people, all those kind of things. And then went out and deployed, and we went and did most of our operations were in the Arabian Gulf, hanging out there, launching. I mean, I wasn't launching airplanes, but the Carrier Strike Group was launching airplanes into mostly Iraq and flying over Syria in support of counter-ISIS operations. So it's pretty cool to see. Didn't have a lot to do with my job on the carrier. My job in particular was to provide intelligence for more kind of, I guess, ship-based intelligence, or what the ships need rather than what the pilots are looking at going over the horizon. But it was cool to kind of be a part of that larger mission. And then in the end, we hung out in the Eastern Mediterranean a little bit before heading home. So it was a good tour. I enjoyed it a lot.
That's it. That's awesome. So then kind of continuing on through your career, going back to shore, you started a family somewhere in there, right?
Yeah. So I guess in those, I was actually right when I got back from deployment, out and met my wife. And we dated for 3 or 4 months, and then I went out to Bahrain, and she stayed. And we ended up. She ended up coming out to Bahrain at one point. We got engaged, and eventually got married and kids and all that good stuff. So yeah, yeah. So I mean, that's another reason I suppose I really like my FIT tours. I met my wife, so can't complain about that.
That's a pretty good deal right there.
Yeah.
What was it like balancing the family and then also being like highly involved inside of the intelligence community and kind of getting into that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I guess I kind of fast forward a little bit here. So when did my Bahrain tour, and then after Bahrain went to Hawaii, and that was kind of my first duty station, with a family. And that was actually a really, really good experience. I was working in a kind of a unique billet where our office was maybe half civilian. So we had about 12 people in our office, half civilian, and then, the other half of us were military, one other Navy officer, and then a variety of other branches in there. So it was a different environment, especially different than being on a ship, or when I was in Bahrain at Fifth Fleet, just a different things that we were looking at, and kind of work-life balance. So it was actually a really good tour to kind of learn how to have a family, because it's not saying we worked 9 to 5 every day, but it was at least a lot more predictable schedules, and I guess you could say kind of grown-up rules. So like giving you a little freedom, come in, get your work done, work what you need to do, and then there wasn't a lot of the collateral duties, extra things that come along with being in the military. And so that was a really big advantage, is getting rid of some of those other duties beyond your normal job that kind of just take up hours of your day, and hours of your day is time away from your family. So but it was really good. Kind of learning to be a dad there, figuring out how to do that balance. And one of the things I really like about being in the intel community is that all our work is classified for the most part. I mean, except for the personnel management stuff, it's all on computers that you can't bring home, stuff that you can't talk about on the phone, things like that. So once I walk out of work, I'm pretty much done working. I don't have a choice. I can't work if I wanted to. So it was really nice having that hard line between kind of work and family life, which has since disappeared because I'm at MPS now. But
yeah. Real quick before we kind of talk about what brought you to NPS, wanted to circle back to that assignment in Bahrain. What was that? What was that like?
So Bahrain was I was working at the Fifth Fleet, so our AFCENT right, for y'all. And that's the Navy equivalent of that. So it's actually very similar to the job that I was doing on the Truman when I was doing my intel stuff there. Basically finding boats and figuring out where they are. So it was a good change to see it, kind of from a very tactical perspective on the Truman when I was there, and then kind of going up one level to the more theater side, looking out a little bit more, having a little bit of a different focus, but still, the same problem set. So as I said, we're expected to, the Navy intelligence kind of expects us to have a very wide breadth of knowledge, but I was able to do 2 tours in a row at the same, looking at the same thing. So it's easy to look good when you've been doing the same thing for a while, and some people are maybe just getting into it. And yeah, I really liked it there. Most of that time was standing watch, and then being kind of in charge of the watch there. So yeah, but it was good. It was interesting to live in Bahrain. I don't know if have you ever been out to the Middle East? Or
I have not.
Yeah, I guess you're a second lieutenant, so unless you're just going
I'm
out there to
fresh.
have fun. Yeah, so Bahrain, I kind of tell people it's kind of like the Las Vegas of the Middle East in some ways. So for those who don't know, Bahrain is just like this really tiny island off the coast of Saudi Arabia, and it's its own kingdom. British took it over at one point and gave it back, and but it's connected to Saudi Arabia with this bridge. And one of the sayings is that Allah can't see across the bridge. So you get is a lot of the Saudis and things like that coming over to Bahrain on the weekends, and there's alcohol, there's all kinds of, let's say, sinful, I guess, behaviors going on. I mean, it's not quite like Las Vegas. It's still an Arab country, and still has some of the conservative things to it, and you would not mistake walking around Bahrain for walking around Las Vegas, but it's a kind of just a comparison. So it wasn't too bad of a transition culturally going from one to the other, plus just working all the time. So for the Navy, at least at the time that I was there, most of the people that were there are on 1-year unaccompanied orders. So it's just a lot of people there, no families. So at least what I find, if you're not working, you're going to get into trouble. So I think that a lot of other people find that. So it was a really high op tempo, really high expectations for the amount that people worked. And I think that is a challenge for some people. But like I said, for me, it kept me out of trouble as a newly married young man. So I can't complain about that at all. And again, I really enjoyed the job. Kind of very baseline Navy intelligence stuff, building on what I did on the Truman. So it was a good experience.
So yeah, I know that you kept yourself out of trouble, but you were leading airmen. Do you have any suggestions for people out there who need some strategies to help their airmen or sailors stay out of trouble when they are inside of those situations and you have to lead them?
Oh man. I mean, it really is just about engagement and being understanding with your sailors or airmen or whatever enlisted folks you have with you, and then also just leveraging the more senior enlisted folks and their knowledge. And I think that it's hard to draw that line between being a leader, being a friend, knowing about them, knowing too much, because at the end of the day, you're still your boss, but they're people, you care about them, you want them to succeed. Mm-hmm. And again, as they're people, there will be mistakes. So I think that, no matter how plugged in, tuned in you are with your sailors, airmen, whoever, there's going to be mistakes. So it's a lot of how you handle the mistakes that when you make as a leader or they make just in their own personal decisions. And just kind of coming at it with an understanding of where they are and understanding where they're going, what their goals are, why they made the decisions they did, and then kind of making sure that those situations don't happen again. I had our very first port call on the Truman. So coming from FID, we were in charge of the imagery division. So all of my sailors that worked for me were imagery interpreters, so looking at satellite pictures to figure out where boats are. So first port call, talking about this for most of us, this is our first port call of our Navy career because they're all pretty much fresh out of their own intel school as well. Like I had, so there's 5 of us. I had one IS-1 and IS-2, so E6 and E5, and then the rest were E4s or E3s. Yeah, so don't do anything stupid. You're here. You're kind of the face of America. Those kind of things. But as it is, sailors are sailors, and young kids are young kids,
Yep.
and they'll always make the best decisions. So I think it was about 5 hours into the port call, one of my sailors got arrested for drunk and disorderly in public. So he was picked up by the Croatian police and brought down to the brig on the ship, and so that was fun. I think he learned his lesson, and I think I learned a little bit more about setting expectations and kind of matching personalities as Liberty buddies. So like when you go into port, you have your battle buddy, your person that's supposed to watch out for you, and in this case, they just kind of each had their own idea of what looking out for each other meant. But he for sure learned his lesson. He got a reduction in rank, half month's pay for 2 months, which is an E4 down to an E3, and then losing half your money for 2 months is a pretty good lesson. I don't think he got off the ship again until like our 6 or 7 months into our deployment. So, but he's a good sailor. He did his job, and I think, like I said, I think he learned his lesson. And again, it's understanding him and kind of what led him to make those decisions. It's a young kid, not a lot of exposure to alcohol and things like that before, underestimating what it's like to go out and party with people, just inexperience. And so I think, just knowing and getting a better sense of things like that before you go in, and again, matching up might be more responsible parties with some of the newer parties. So that was a very, very quick early learning experience, leadership experience for me.
Sure, and that's an awesome lesson to be able to then pass that on to other officers that you have under you and other people that you have. That's a big thing.
Oh yeah, no, it was. It was not a fun time.
Yeah, I'm sure a lot of wisdom was gained over that experience.
Yeah, and have not made that mistake again, or at least I don't think I have. So I guess that's good. And there's always leadership things you learn every day, managing people, and motivating people, especially when you're on the tail end of deployment, where we've been sitting in this same box in the water in the Arabian Gulf, watching the same things happen every day. Kind of Groundhog Day sets in, and so being able to keep people engaged through that, and making sure that. And what I found is just like mental stimulation. It's like, okay, this is going to happen because guess what? It's happened every day since we've been here. Predict what would happen if something happened differently, or start looking at a different problem. Because guess what? You don't need too much brain power to understand what's happening. That it's happened every day. So let's go figure out what's happening somewhere else. Let's go figure out what's going to happen in the future. So it's always, just keeping your mind engaged and thinking. And so people aren't, falling asleep, spacing out on watch. That's always an issue.
Mm-hmm. So you finish up in Bahrain, you go to Hawaii, now wife, kids, family, start balancing all of that. Then what's the next step in your career after that then?
Yeah, so after Hawaii, it was coming out here to Navy Postgraduate School.
Okay, so what brought you here then?
That's a good question. I was not always the biggest fan of school. When I finished my undergraduate degree, I was like, okay, I'm done. I'm never going back to school. Yeah, here I am. So really, what brought me here was I was going to have to go to school at some point, so it might as well be now. As you move up in the ranks, having a master's degree, having JPME pushed out, it's pretty much a necessity. So I was going to have to do it at some point. I might as well do it as my full-time job, not having to balance school, work, and family together, doing classes at night or whatever. And the people that do that, I think that's really good on you, because I could not do it. But as much as I admittedly came into MPS in the academic world with a relatively negative attitude, I think it's really been a very, very beneficial experience here. I'm in my third quarter now, so about halfway through from my program. And I've learned a ton. It's been engaging.
So what program are you in?
So I'm in National Securities Affairs, the East Asia track. So basically that's just political science with focused on East Asia. Okay. For the way it works for us, at least in the Intel community, when applying to MPS, is we send our detailer, which is the person that hands out jobs, kind of our list of, these are, rank order 1 to 7, I think. I can't remember how many programs us Intel folks are allowed to apply into. Rank them out, they say, okay, you're going to go do East Asia, go apply to that. And then you do, and you get in and come here. So it's been good. I've learned a ton. It came from Hawaii. So, they're working with Indo-PACOM staff and HQ there. So I had some baseline knowledge, at least of the more military aspects of the region. But now kind of getting more into the political side, kind of in more strategic level. And it was strategic at PACOM, but maybe a different, just coming through a different lens with this.
So that's really cool. So then do you have to do a thesis for that then?
Yeah, I'll be writing a thesis, basically looking at how the naval intelligence community supports, I guess it's whatever buzzword you want to use, great power competition, strategic competition in the Indo-Pacific and in the kind of mid-2030s timeframe. So the idea being, as our competitors grow in influence and the world evolves, changes, so that the information sphere plays a much larger role in warfare. How does Navy intelligence match that? And where do we need to put people? What do people need to know? What do people need to be able to do in order to ensure that the Navy intelligence community is effectively supporting naval operations? So should be good.
I'd say it sounds interesting, especially as, everybody's ramping up right now in the current geopolitical landscape of the world. So,
it's a rapidly changing environment, and I think I think it'll be relevant. It's actually got my thesis topic from Captain Height, who is the kind of senior naval intelligence officer at the school. And just approached him and said, "Hey, sir, what do you think would be good? What are we looking at?" He said, "This actually came down from some folks down at the Pentagon who had kind of a similar question." And then we just kind of shaped it a little bit to match some of the academic requirements that come with being a student and writing a thesis. But I think it should be good. I'm glad that there'll be somebody at least interested in reading it besides me, my thesis advisors. But yeah, so it's kind of shaping that out this quarter, exactly how that's going to look. But I think it'll be good. I think one of the, kind of talked before, one of the reasons I had kind of a negative view of academia was kind of this ivory tower type view of them. And I think while that is definitely true in some ways at MPS and at any school, really, I found that a lot of the people, a lot of the professors, faculty here are very interested in supporting, doing applicable research to help the fleet or the DoD, whichever side you're on. And really once, kind of slogged through those kind of intro courses where it's very, talking about political theories and things like that, that was pretty killer for me. But as we get into kind of the more directed studies of, okay, now you kind of understand all these theories. How do those play out in the real world? And then, how do they, as an Intel person, you always look into the future, right? And it's pretty, and you're a METOC guy or meteorology. Yeah. So you have the same thing. I always say, like, my job is always to be better than the weather guessers. So if, you guys make a forecast and I make a forecast, hopefully I end up on top, but we'll see. Anyways, being able to use the things that we learned and now applying them. And as that application process is played out, it's helped me enjoy academia a lot more.
So that's awesome. So then, in your time here, you've gotten involved with the Trident Room podcast. What drew you to it? How'd you hear about it?
Yeah. Heard about the Trident Room podcast on the muster page one day and reached out to the email that was on there. Went with it. So some of the reasons that I decided to reach out were, one, I really enjoy listening to podcasts. Especially, I kind of got into it when my son was born, and he just liked to be walked around as you're holding him. So I spent a lot of time just walking in silence, and then I was like, all right, well, I'll try out these podcast things, and really enjoyed them. I've been listening to podcasts pretty regularly since then. And then in my last job in Hawaii, a lot of my job was basically doing this, interviewing people and talking to them, and it was a lot of that. So I figured it was a good skill set that I built up, and I think that's something that I kind of wanted to stay with. I was being able to just have a coherent conversation with somebody and ask them interesting, relevant questions, I think is a good thing to have. As we were talking about communication before, being able to talk to someone who's communicating with them, understanding what people want to hear, things like that. So I just kind of wanted to make sure I kept that skill set up, and also just find it interesting and find a way to kind of keep me engaged while I'm here at MPS with some of the different things that maybe don't necessarily fall within my curriculum of study. So it's been great so far.
That's awesome. Since you still have some time left here, what do you see the future of the podcast growing into?
Yeah, well, I'm really hoping that we can create a lot of engagement, find some value for the students and anybody else kind of associated with MPS. I think that we get a lot of freedoms with the podcast to kind of talk about with whatever we like. Really, our kind of guiding principle is, produce episodes that are interesting to the MPS population. So that gives you a pretty wide berth, and I think that for those of you that are regular Trident Room podcast listeners, you'll see we have everything from, we had some of the family episode. We had people talking about quantum physics.
There's the sustainability farming.
Yeah, I actually really enjoyed sustainability farming that Marcus did. I was like, it's on my feed. I'll listen to it. I'll see what's up. And Marcus is a good guy. But I enjoyed it a lot more than I thought I would. And I thought it was really interesting, had some really interesting ideas. And I think that's one of the good things about the podcast is being able to, there's so many interesting things going on here at MPS that just don't get enough light. I think that, things are popularized and things have good effects, but being able to see, to the population and to, people like me looking at, oh man, do I really want to go into academia? Do I want to go to MPS? Like, learning like, oh yeah, they do all kinds of interesting stuff there that's very relevant to the DoD, kind of makes more people more interested, and the more people have interested, the better people we can get here, the better the school gets.
So then once you leave this place, do you have any idea where you're going next, or what your kind of goal for the future is?
Yeah, so after this, actually in that process right now, figuring out where we're going to go. Fingers crossed to go down to 3rd Fleet, which is in San Diego. Can't beat San Diego. I'm going to do a bunch of hardship tours from Hawaii to Monterey to San Diego.
Darn.
But hey, that's why I chose the Navy, because you're pretty much always by an ocean. Some ocean areas are nicer than other ocean areas, but at least I'm not in the middle of the desert somewhere. I guess I could go to. My wife already ruled out Fallon, Nevada. She said no, it is not happening. So we're not going to Fallon. So go down to 3rd Fleet potentially, which would be a very similar job to what I did at 5th Fleet in Bahrain. Finding ships and figuring out where they are and telling people where they are. Hopefully we'll get picked up from 04 at some point. When that happens, probably back onto a ship and into the real Navy again. So
that's awesome. And so how will MPS help you then in your career moving forward?
Yes, I think it's twofold. So one, having the greater understanding of Asia, the Pacific in general, kind of understanding some of the power dynamics, goals, things that influence decision making within these countries, governments, and things like that. Because my as a Navy intelligence or as any intelligence officer, your job is to tell the future, which no one can really do, but you can give it a pretty good shot. And the more information you have, the better understanding you have of some of the drivers behind what the decision makers are doing. It translates kind of to all levels. So you can look at it from a very broad sense, like, why is, for example, in recent days, China's been flying a whole bunch of missions into Taiwan airspace. So why is that happening? What is China trying to message to Taiwan? Are they messaging to Taiwan? They're messaging to the world in general, and kind of understanding that piece all the way down to, as you look at kind of the more bureaucratic sides of the way that countries work. Why is this fleet acting in this manner? Oh, well, they got a new admiral, and this admiral has these goals, so it's going to change the way they do. So kind of understanding the way those bureaucracies works, what they reward people to get promoted, and then everyone wants to get promoted at their job. So once you understand the way that the inner workings of some of these bureaucracies work, you can kind of predict what people will do when they go different places. So I think that those are some of the goals that I get from kind of the East Asia focus there. And then the other half, kind of as I was talking about, is having the time, bandwidth, the access to the people with the knowledge of some of the more naval tactics, naval doctrine aspects of things. So I think those are going to be the two biggest takeaways for me going forward and helping out the Navy in the future.
It's awesome. Well, thank you so much. Really appreciate having this conversation. How do you enjoy your time not interviewing somebody but being interviewed this time?
Oh, no, it was good. It was interesting. I feel my voice getting a little sore. I should have let you talk more. I should have taken more breaks.
It's been awesome so far. I really enjoy my time in the podcast so far, and the opportunity to get mentored by people like you and like Joe. And so I'm really, really looking forward to what the future has to hold.
Yeah, I think it'll be great. And, we're always looking for new blood on the Trident Room Podcast. So anybody out there at NPS listening, come check us out. We have a webpage, and just search up Trident Room Podcast. You should have a link in the show notes, and shoot us an email. We're always looking for new folks to come on board.
Thank you. Thank you for your time. Thank you, everybody, for listening, and have a good one.
Yeah, it was great. See y'all.
Thanks for joining us in the Trident Room. For more information about today's guests and topics, please visit the show notes. The Trident Room Podcast has been brought to you by the Naval Postgraduate School, Alumni Association, and Foundation. For questions, comments, and suggestions, please email us at tridentroompodcasthost@nps.edu and find us online at nps.edu/Trident Room Podcast.